Okay, so you all know me, but for anybody watching the video who doesn't know who I am, my name is Amanda. I'm the community health specialist here. Most of you know me as the gal who coordinates our wellness program, but I also do a lot of different things out in the community for health and well-being as well. One of them being our tobacco prevention grant for all of Bremer County. So that's kind of where this information is coming from. And I'm doing a lot of work recently around the vaping epidemic and all of that, because the world of tobacco is always changing. If people are going to quit smoking, the tobacco companies know they have to come out with something else in order to continue making their money. So insert vaping, and here we are with this huge issue. So this presentation I did for like an hour-long speaker series, so if I talk really fast, that's why. But I'll try to be kind of brief, and then whatever questions you guys have, feel free to ask. So just a little bit about what we're going to go through today. I'll talk about electronic nicotine delivery systems, which is just the big general term for all types of e-cigarettes. So I'll kind of define that, talk about the different varieties. Then I'm also going to talk about the ingredients that are in e-cigarettes, including nicotine, which is the main concern when it comes to these products, the health effects of using them. And then I'm going to talk mostly about our youth and their use with them, because they're predominantly who's using these products, and then how the tobacco companies are marketing these products towards that demographic as well. So, ENDS, or electronic nicotine delivery systems, is just a term that we use to kind of blanket all types of e-cigarettes. So whether you hear it called e-cigarette, e-cig, Juul, vape, mod, tank, vape pen, all of those things are, yes, they are different varieties, but they all operate in general in the same way. So if you hear me kind of refer to any of those, that's what I am referring to. But in general, they're just battery-powered devices that work by heating a liquid or an e-liquid into an aerosol that the user then inhales and exhales. So they're a non-combustible tobacco product, meaning they can't be burned. They are heated, which we will talk about, but they also all the varieties use a different form of e-liquid, which contains nicotine. In about 99% of cases, the e-cigarette's going to have nicotine in it, which I'll talk to in a little bit. Flavorings, propylene glycol, and vegetable glycerin, those are the two thickening agents that are in e-cigarettes. And then other chemicals, ingredients, some of which we know, some of which we don't know yet. And then sometimes people are using these devices to use other drugs or vape marijuana in a lot of cases. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So each e-cigarette, doesn't matter what variety or what kind it is, they have 4 basic components. So you're going to have the cartridge, which is what holds the e-juice or the e-liquid. Then you're going to have the heating element. I don't think my thing works. Nope. You're going to have the heating element, which then vaporizes or heats that liquid. The battery, which does all the heavy lifting, does all the work, and then you have the mouthpiece, which the user inhales. So all of that looks different depending on what kind of e-cigarette they have, but in general, they all kind of operate that way. So I'm going to pull up this video. It's just like a couple minute synopsis of e-cigarettes. Hopefully we will have some sound.
The use of electronic cigarettes, or e-cigarettes, is on the rise and has become the new hot topic of public health. But what is an e-cigarette, really? E-cigs are also known as electronic nicotine delivery systems. There are many different shapes and styles of e-cigarettes, but no matter what they look like, all e-cigs work the same way, by vaporizing nicotine. Originally developed in China as a method to help smokers quit, almost all the major tobacco companies have either bought e-cigarette companies or set up in-house development. It is possible to buy e-cigarettes labeled as nicotine-free, but when scientists at the FDA tested these nicotine-free e-cigs, they still found small amounts of nicotine. Nicotine is the highly addictive drug naturally found in tobacco. E-cigarettes are designed to deliver nicotine into the blood, just like regular cigarettes, by smokers inhaling it into the lungs. But how do e-cigarettes contain nicotine if there's no tobacco? Since nicotine cannot be turned into a vapor on its own, it's mixed with chemicals called propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin. This mixture is called e-juice. When a user inhales, the battery heats the e-juice, which becomes a vapor that gets inhaled into the lungs. There are a wide variety of e-cig products, and each contains e-juice with a different amount of nicotine and chemicals. But scientifically, what do we know about this e-juice liquid? Well, not much. Without regulation, companies are not required to inform consumers. E-cigarettes are often marketed as cool and fashionable, but this new trend is delivering nicotine, a highly addictive drug, in varying or unknown amounts.
Okay, so that's just a really basic overview of what they are, kind of how they operate. So let's talk about the ingredients a little bit. We often hear the aerosol referred to as a water vapor, which is why people think that it's a safe option. It's a safer option because people think water, that can't be harmful, right? But if you look at the ingredients of an e-juice, it does work. Water is actually not ever an ingredient in e-juice, so there's really no way you can produce water vapor out of something that doesn't have water in it. So it's actually an aerosol. Like I said before, it's got this e-liquid that's then heated into the aerosol. So the e-liquid contains nicotine, it contains those flavorings in most cases, that thickening agent, and then some other chemicals as well. A lot of those chemicals are the same chemicals that are used in regular tobacco products that we have lots of research behind, and we know that they cause cancer and sickness and disease. So the chemicals that are in here are not necessarily safe either. You also see in the ingredients it'll say natural and artificial flavorings. So people see that and they're like, well, natural and artificial flavoring, so that's in my food, like I eat that, so it should be fine. But your gut can handle a whole lot more than your lungs can, so those kinds of chemicals or flavorings or whatnot are made for you to ingest. And so when people are putting them into an e-liquid and then heating it and putting it into their lungs, their body's like, whoa, like this is not intended to be in my lungs, and that's why we're seeing a lot of sickness, which I will talk about as well. And then that aerosol, when it's heated, it still has nicotine in it, so even when it's exhaled, people can inhale that secondhand aerosol and still be inhaling nicotine. So I've had kids, I did a presentation at Wapsie Valley a couple weeks ago, and one girl came up to me and she said, are headaches a symptom of nicotine, like getting nicotine in your body or being sensitive to nicotine? And I said, yeah, it can be. And she was asking because she would like go in the bathroom when people were vaping, and she'd instantly get a headache because she's sensitive to nicotine. And so I'm like, yeah, it's in the secondhand aerosol that you're inhaling as well. So then also in that aerosol, when it's heated through, like especially a metal coil, which is in the device, it's going to create these ultra fine or super small chemicals that are going to be inhaled deeply into your lungs. Flavorings, like I talked about, one of them is diacetyl. This is a chemical that's been linked to serious lung disease and other products as well. Organic compounds, cancer-causing chemicals, and then heavy metals as well. So all of those things in what people are inhaling and in the secondhand smoke as well. So this statistic is actually from 2014, so it's very possible that there's even more than 460 e-cigarette brands on the market. I can probably guarantee you that there is. But that's just like the types of devices. There's thousands of different types of e-liquid, e-juices, all of that on the market. But in general, they all kind of operate the same way with those four basic components like I talked about. So here's some examples of the different kinds of e-cigarettes and how they've kind of evolved over the years. They started entering the market in the United States around 2007. Like the video said, they were first designed in China to help people quit smoking. So yes, that was their initial intent, but obviously they have evolved since then. So this is our first generation e-cigarette. They most closely resemble a regular cigarette because that was their initial intention. They're a one-time use and they're disposable. So all of those same components, but they can't be recharged or refilled. The e-juice or the liquid is already within this, so that can't be replaced as either just a one-time use. Then we've got our second and third generation e-cigarettes. So the second generation ones, these are the ones that kind of look like pens here, the tall, skinny ones. They're usually a little bit larger than the disposable ones. They're pen-shaped. They can be recharged and refilled, so these are more than just a one-time use. And these second and third generation ones are where people start to kind of customize the way that they're using them, because they can just buy different types of e-juices to refill them and reuse them. So the e-juices would come in like a little bottle, almost looks like a little eye drop bottle, and it's got the liquid in it. And then they refill the tanks in the system to reuse it. The third generation, those are the larger ones, like our tank, these bigger tank systems. They've started not looking like actual cigarettes. So they're very large. They're often called mods because people can modify them and use them in a way that they want to. So they can use different types of e-juices, they can mix them. They can also kind of customize the batteries and other options, so they can customize how much vapor they're inhaling, that kind of thing. Again, these ones are reusable, rechargeable, more than a one-time use as well. And then these are pod systems. These are the ones that our youth are most familiar with, and probably the ones that you have seen the most. Recently they started entering the market around 2015, so it's been almost 5 years already. They're popular because they have a sleek, high-tech design, and they're easy to be discreet with. They're easy to conceal, so this is why our youth want to use them. They comprise nearly 3/4 of the e-cigarette market. So in general, if you see somebody using an e-cigarette, it's probably going to be one like this. The problem with these is that they have a very, very high nicotine delivery. I think this stat is in one of the next slides, but they have, most of the Juul pods have the same amount of nicotine as about a pack of cigarettes. So about 20 cigarettes. Same amount of nicotine in one little, I know, it's nuts, in one little pod, and that's why it's such an issue with our youth, because that's a ton of nicotine that they're putting in their body, which I'll talk about when it comes to health effects too. But basically, the e-liquid for these is sold in these little pods, which Michelle is probably what you were talking about that you see. They're teeny tiny, but the juice is inside this pod, and when the e-juice runs out, the pod clicks out. They pick a new flavor or a new kind, they click it in and recharge it and reuse it again. Same thing goes these. So this is Juul. These are the ones that are most popular. This is called a Sorin drop. It's just another brand of a pod-based system. This is a Vuse. Like I said, just different brands, but more than likely you're probably going to see Juul most, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So Juul has like the highest level of nicotine of most e-cigarettes on the market, and like I said, about the same amount of nicotine as 20 cigarettes. So, and you'll see too, like the average nicotine concentration in e-liquid, like for a tank system or another type of e-cigarette, is going to be about 36 milligrams per milliliter, but for Juul that's 59 milligrams per milliliter, so a lot more that way. And you will notice here too, on the box it says 5% strength. This is, again, just kind of a marketing tactic of the tobacco companies, which I'll talk about it towards the end if we make it there. But they use numbers like 5% strength because kids see 5% and like, oh, that's not that much. But in reality, we know that it is a lot. So that's
Am I
Juul.
correct? It's not regulated at all by the FDA?
It is now.
It is
Kind
now.
of. Yes. I have a slide about that. Yep.
So, how many, I mean, it says it's worth 20 cigarettes, so how many puffs, I mean.
How many pods do people go through? So a pod.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I don't.
How long does a pod last?
Right.
Yeah.
It depends on
Like
what
how
some
often?
kids go, like some youth who are using it every day, all day, go through a pod a day.
Really, you're
Some
hearing
people,
that?
yep,
so-
some
okay.
people, I mean, go through a pod a week. It just depends on how often they're using it, just like a smoker. It depends on how heavy they're smoking, but I don't think that they realize that there's that much nicotine in one little pod. They think it's so harmless, but that's getting your brain addicted very quickly. So how they're able to do this, Juul has figured out a way to kind of make nicotine less harsh on the body. And so most tobacco products operate with a type of nicotine called freebase nicotine. And so when somebody inhales from a cigarette, they're going to feel that hit a little bit harder. It's going to be kind of harsh on their throat. Eventually, obviously, they get used to it because people smoke for a long time. But kids, especially, don't like that feeling. And it feels harsh. It feels gross. So Juul has learned how to make that feeling less or minimize it and kind of go away. So they know that if you combine nicotine with this chemical called benzoic acid, it turns it into more of a nicotine salt, which is the type of nicotine that Juul uses. So when they take the hit off of that Juul, it's not harsh on their throat, it doesn't hurt their body, so it goes down smoother and easier too. Just again, another marketing tactic, and they know that the more nicotine that they can add to their products, the higher levels of addiction are going to come of that. Okay, so nicotine, you guys are all familiar with what nicotine is, but basically it stimulates those adrenal glands in your brain. It's going to release those happy chemicals such as adrenaline and dopamine, which is why people feel that high and they get addicted so quickly, because their brain gets used to that feeling. The brain likes that feeling. So it causes pleasure in the brain, and it kind of rewires the pathways in your brain as well. So that's why people have such a hard time when they're trying to quit tobacco products. Is because their brain has literally been wired in a certain way that includes nicotine. So when you take that away, the brain is like, this is not right, this is not normal, I don't like this. And that's why people have such a hard time doing that. So research also shows that just nicotine addiction alone can increase risk of addiction for other drugs as well. So especially with our youth, that's a big deal, because if they're getting addicted to nicotine at a young age, it's priming them for addiction and other ways as well. Addiction is a learned behavior, so their body is learning how to be addicted to something. So some health effects of the use of e-cigarettes. The main issue we have is the nicotine, which I just talked about. So the problem with nicotine use, especially in youth, is that their brains are developing until they're age 25. Which I think a lot of people don't realize or think about. They think about, oh, high school, 18, they're adults, they're good to go. Well, their brains are still developing for quite some time after that. So if they're using nicotine at any age before 25 or even after, they're teaching their brain to develop and learn things in a way that includes nicotine, like I talked about. So that brain is developing, is growing with nicotine in their body, and so that makes it a lot harder for the brain to develop fully and to develop in the way that it needs to without nicotine. I don't need to go through each and everything on here, but aside from the brain effects that we're worried about with youth, it also exposes the lungs to a variety of chemicals, which we've talked about, that are in the e-liquid and then that are also in the aerosol when that liquid is heated or vaporized. The big thing is we don't know the long-term health effects of vaping yet, because like I said, they only entered the market 12, 13 years ago. So we're not going to know until our kids are adults or our kids are dying or getting sick. And so when I give presentations to kids, I say you're basically the lab rats for the tobacco companies, because they don't even know what this is going to do to you. Yes, we do have research on, obviously we know what nicotine does to the body, so we have research on that and we know that's not a good thing. But there are also chemicals that are used in e-cigarettes that are also used in cigarettes that we have tons of research on. We know what those chemicals do in the form of a cigarette, so why would it be any different basically with an e-cigarette? However, we can't come out and say that it causes lung cancer or it causes heart attacks or whatnot, because we haven't had anybody around long enough using them to know that. So in the news back in the fall, this was more prevalent. It's kind of back down now that they've sort of identified what the issue was, but there were a lot of people being hospitalized and even dying from the use of e-cigarettes. It was almost across all of our states. Back in November, there was 2,000 cases and 42 deaths. I think it's more like 2,400 cases now. But they kind of narrowed it down to this additive called vitamin E acetate, which was just another chemical that was used as like a thickening agent in the e-cigarettes. And so when that's heated and vaporized and inhaled into the lungs, it was causing a lot of damage and problems for people using those e-cigarettes. Vitamin E is found in many foods and skin products, but like I said, in the form of a vapor and inside your lungs, it does a lot more damage than it would like in your stomach or on your skin. And then they also narrowed down that a lot of the products were from people that were vaping THC or marijuana. And a lot of the issues were that people were buying these products off market or on the black market, and so they weren't. Yes, there are some regulations around e-cigarettes. It could be much better, but there certainly aren't for ones that are off the market. And so the FDA was not approving that these additives be used, and people were using products and getting very sick. Okay, so this is one of the most popular questions Melinda asked me right when I entered. Aren't they safer than a cigarette? So there are, in general, fewer toxins or fewer chemicals than there are in cigarettes. But again, we don't know what the long-term health effects are. So it's hard for us to say that they are safer. And I always say that safer doesn't necessarily mean that they're safe. So it's possible that years from now we find out that they are a safer alternative, but it doesn't mean that they're a safe alternative. That doesn't mean that they're good in our bodies. They're still a tobacco product. They still contain nicotine and cause addiction. So it's just like any other drug. And especially this is the case for youth. So I can say that they're 100% not safer for anybody under the age of 25 because of that brain development that we just talked about, as well as pregnant women, because nicotine can still affect a developing baby as well. So who's using them? Basically our youth. About 1 in 4 high schoolers are using an e-cigarette, and even kids as young as middle school are using them. We've had some issues at Waverly Shell Rock Middle School of kids who have gotten caught using e-cigarettes, and so it's not uncommon for us to see kids that young using these products, which is a really sad thing, because if you think about a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old putting nicotine in their body at that age, that's a really long time for them to be using nicotine, and really early for them to be getting addicted. So some marketing tactics that the tobacco companies use a lot. They spend a lot of money trying to get people hooked on these products, but they especially spend a lot of money trying to get our youth hooked on them. They're not out there to help adults quit smoking. They could care less how many adults use their products. They're out there to get new users hooked at a young age so that they're using their products for the rest of their lives. So they use flavorings and chemicals to do that. I'll talk about the flavorings in just a second because there was just a new rule about those. But that is one of the major marketing tactics that they use. They basically make it look fun, they make it look new, exciting, safe, all of that. Misleading labeling of nicotine, that's kind of what I referred to when I says like 5% or whatnot. It makes it seem like it's a really small amount, or like the video said, it'll make it seem like it's nicotine free when it's really not. The CDC says that 99% of e-cigarette products have nicotine in one form or another in them. So chances are you're not using an e-cigarette that's nicotine free. Changing social norms. So we're seeing a lot of this. It's just normal for kids to use these now. It's not a big deal to them. A lot of it is social media. They market a lot through social media. They make it just seem normal, seem like part of everyday life. And like I said, they use that target audience of youth. So they're going to use ads that are like this. You don't have adults who are trying to quit smoking that look like that. You have kids that are learning to use the product looking like that, or that want to look like that, or whatever. So they're going to use sex, rebellion, independence, all of those things that you think are cool or important to kind of lure them in. They're going to use celebrities or popular people that they look up to, using those products to kind of lure them in as well. So how is vaping regulated? It is illegal for anybody under the age of 21 to purchase now federally, and that's for any tobacco product. So that was actually a really big win for tobacco control at least. However, like I said, it kind of flew under the radar. A lot of people aren't even aware of that yet. The FDA announced it like 4 days before Christmas, and it was just kind of out of the blue. It was kind of lumped in with another bill. So federally, nobody can sell to anyone under the age of 21. The problem is that state laws are kind of behind the game now. Like Iowa state law, yes, federally they can't sell to anybody who's 21, but like if somebody who's 19 gets caught using an e-cigarette, they're not going to get in trouble because we don't have any laws yet in our state for possession or for just having those products. And so there's still, I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, because it likely will. They'll probably follow suit at some point, but it takes time to get there. So right now it's kind of, it doesn't really match up. But that is one rule. In 2016, the FDA introduced the deeming rule, basically saying that we're going to be in charge of these products now. So before 2016, nobody was in charge of regulating e-cigarettes, which was, they were all over the board, they were sold whenever, wherever, and now since 2016, the FDA is over all e-cigarettes. In 2018, nicotine warning labels required on all products and must list ingredients, so that was a win as well. But there's still off-market products being distributed that we don't know what's in them. There always will be. Anybody selling e-cigarettes, they have to check ID. They can't provide any type of free samples of any way. Products are used in vending machines. They're not allowed to do that in any place where youth might be. And then they're not allowed to claim that e-cigarettes are safer alternatives to other tobacco products. However, I'm sure they still are. Technically, they're not supposed to, but. And then this last one was the most recent rule. So I think the beginning of this month, I'm pretty sure the FDA removed all fruit and mint flavored vaping products and said that nobody can have those anymore. However, they excluded menthol and tobacco flavored products. So menthol is like one of the most highly used flavors. There's money in these products, and so the government's not going to do anything that's going to make too big of a stink when it comes to companies that come up with that much money. So people can still buy products that are tobacco and menthol flavored. So those are still out there, and flavors can still be used in those tank systems. So those second generation e-cigarettes that we talked about, the ones that look like pens and the ones that look like those big tanks, people can still go to an actual vape shop and buy flavors for those products. So they've taken fruit flavors or any flavors away from like the pods, like the Juul pods and stuff like that, which will help with our youth, but it's not to say that they can't go out and buy a vape pen that's mango flavored, because they can still do that. So it's progress, but it's definitely not 100%, and it's not what we need quite yet. Okay, I just have a couple more slides, but this is kind of interesting because this is just some products kind of in disguise. Some of them are a little crazy, but you'd be surprised what you see out there. So this is a vape pen right in here, and a lot of kids actually have these in the strings of their hoodies. This one looks like a phone case, but it's got the mouthpiece coming off the top there. This one's smartwatch even can pop right off, and then somebody could use that to vape. And then this is just a Juul right here. So even that, when it's not pulled apart, just looks like a USB drive.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all very discreet. These ones made to look like inhalers. There's hundreds of things, and people can just go online and get them. So they're very widely available. What are some signs of vaping? So obviously presence of equipment or any kind of product packaging that you might see around, like you saw the pods laying around and wondered what that was. Unusual online purchases or packages. I would hope that a lot of parents kind of keep an eye on the things that their kids order, but I think a lot of people don't. And so if they're getting a lot of packages and stuff online, that's where a lot of the times kids will get them. If you can smell something like a flavor, it's going to be kind of faint, but it's going to still be like, why does it smell like bubblegum in here all of a sudden? Like, it's going to be pretty obvious that that's not a scent that should be in the area. People who use nicotine also have increased thirst and increased nosebleeds. So if somebody in your life is maybe experiencing that, that could be a sign. Decreased caffeine use. Maybe they used to drink coffee all the time or energy drinks, and now all of a sudden they don't need them because they're using nicotine, so they don't need that high. Use of some kind of lingo that you're not familiar with that might be related to that, like hit or drag or whatever, or Juul even. And then appearance or behavior changes. If they've looked a certain way off forever, or they've acted a certain way all the time, and all of a sudden they're like withdrawing from activities that they normally wouldn't have, or they're just making different groups of friends or whatever, that could be a pretty good indicator that they're into something that they maybe shouldn't be. Same. So the best way, if somebody's trying to quit smoking, use an FDA quit aid. So that's like your patches, your lozenges, your gum, even the medications. And then they've always said that the people who have the best luck are the ones that use those products in combination with counseling as well. So the counseling that comes into play for the 2 free programs that we have in Iowa are Quitline Iowa, free to any Iowan, 1-800-QUIT NOW. And then My Life, My Quit is a new program. It's basically Quitline Iowa, but for kids ages 13 to 17. So it's nice because it's very youth specific. They're going to get a youth dedicated coach, and a lot of their stuff is done. It can either be done over text, online, whatever the child is most comfortable with. So that's ages 13 to 17, and then 18 and over is Quitline Iowa. All right. Do you guys have any questions?
I guess, what are you seeing with some of the youth and the trends? I mean, just, yeah, they're vaping, we're seeing it more in the schools.
Yep.
The young age.
Yeah.
Are they finding it more prevalent amongst college versus high school, or there's not much?
I would say high school and college are definitely the most prevalent, but
Yeah.
it's everywhere, especially in high school. I mean, in all the schools in our county, every one of them has contacted me and said it's an issue for them. Kids are doing it in the bathrooms, obviously, and it's so easy to disguise. It's so like.
Are they perceiving it that there's not nicotine in?
Yes.
That's what their thought is.
Some of them are. Some of them just don't realize what nicotine is.
Yeah.
I mean, they know that nicotine is addictive, but
they don't associate it with cigarettes. They know
Right.
cigarettes are bad.
Yeah.
But this,
yeah. Just because, I mean, like I talked about, all of the marketing tactics, the tobacco companies make it seem fine. They make it seem safe and harmless. And yeah, I don't think kids realize the power of nicotine and addiction until it's too late and they can't quit.
And
So.
they're kind of seeing as they can do it anywhere.
Yeah, they're doing
anytime.
it. They're doing it in class.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
they hold it in their sweatshirt and take a hit and
Yeah.
then
because
blow it into their shirt.
There's not tons.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and it's hard for the teachers too because that's not their job. I mean, they shouldn't have to be watching for that all the time and.
And at least amongst my patients, we're not seeing really a lot of adults
Nope.
turn to this.
Nope.
It's totally
Some adults
for the youth.
do, but it's mostly youth. Yeah. Yep.
Are we seeing success rates with them quitting off of the e-cigarette, off of like the vaping?
Not yet.
Not much.
For adults, you mean?
Well, just even if youth want to, or the kids decide they want to, there's really no stats yet, is there?
No, I
On
mean,
them
if
trying to quit?
somebody's using it to quit cigarette use, they're not successful because
Right.
it's still got nicotine. It's got more nicotine than a cigarette does, so they're still just as addicted. But even kids who are wanting to quit their e-cigarette
Vaping,
use,
yeah.
we haven't had a whole lot of success
Had a
yet.
lot of success or much
Yeah.
data on it,
Yeah.
do we?
Yep.
Yeah, because they haven't seen the effects
Right.
down the road.
Right.
or the stats.
All right, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah,